Hey there, my English 102 students. So, today's recap. Let's talk a little bit about what we covered today. Today, our big focus was talking about how do we apply rhetorical analysis to primary sources. And so, just a quick overview. We did the McDonald's example, looking at billboards, and then from there talked about what are examples of primary sources that you might get related to McDonald's as our example. From there, we talked about what types of sources I'm looking for Article 1, and how you would apply your analysis to those sources. And then finally, we talked a bit about the type of citation I'm looking for. Just some quick reminders on that. If you are familiar with MLA, please use that as best as you can, but don't worry about citation formatting at this stage. As long as you have that author's name and as long as you have that article title and a URL, that is most of what you need for your citations. So with that, let's plunge a bit into kind of the examples we covered. So with the McDonald's rhetorical analysis, we talked a bit about billboards and what do we learn from a McDonald's billboard? Big thing, what do they say? It's showing pictures of food, it's showing happiness, that quote, I'm loving it. And, how do they say it? You have the bright colors, we have the, we have those close-up images of the food. And why are they saying that way? They're trying to lure people into the restaurants. They're trying to, make money. And so when we're talking about a rhetorical analysis, those three components right there are the big ones. What are they saying? How are they saying it? Why are they saying it that way? Now, we also talked a bit about what are some examples of primary sources you might find for a topic like McDonald's. Ads, of course, are a great one. But I want to emphasize, you do not feel like you have to do ads. Ads are simply one type of primary source. Any people who are involved with McDonald's, so any employees, any corporate staff, any of the contractors who supply the materials for the milkshake machines, all of those individuals would be primary sources. And so if they had blogs, if they show up in YouTube videos, if they're being interviewed on the radio, those are good primary sources. Websites, many websites are great. The McDonald's corporate website, along with any publications that come from McDonald's or those contractors. But if we start looking at things produced outside of McDonald's, some of those will also be primary sources. So, for example, consumer reviews. If you go to, Google reviews, or if you were writing about a movie and you looked at the reviews on Netflix or book reviews on Amazon, all of those are primary sources. Any contractors who work for McDonald's, and I mentioned that that lawsuit involving the milkshake machines at McDonald's. Any legal docs from those would be primary. Now, let's talk a bit about the sources that you need for your Article 1. With those sources, I'm looking for 3 sources. And the most important source there is you need a main primary source that you're doing your rhetorical analysis on. And so again, what is that source saying? How is it saying it? Why is it saying it that way? And I want to emphasize that you can do any topic at all. Every topic out there will have primary sources. Every primary source can be analyzed rhetorically this way. Now, there are a lot of rhetorical terms out there, a lot of rhetorical concepts. Believe it or not, you already know and use many of these concepts in your everyday life. Every time you're posting to Facebook, every time you're writing an email or a text or telling a joke, you're using rhetoric. You may not be familiar with the specific vocabulary that rhetoricians use, like English teachers will use, but that's okay. As long as you're answering these key questions, what they're saying, how they're saying it, and why they say it that way, you are using the rhetorical concepts. And as the semester goes on, you'll learn more of the terms that go with those. Now, finally, let's talk a bit about citation. Citation is very, very important throughout this course. I am expecting you to always use citation, but at this stage, don't worry about whether the formatting is perfect. As long as you are showing where your information is coming from, as long as I can find those sources, you're going to be good to go here. So the first and most important component of citation is in-text citation, right? So any facts that you learn from another source, you need to cite that source in the paragraph where that information comes from. Make it clear where you found this info. With that citation, the most important thing is the author's last name. Right? As long as you have that author's last name in there for MLA, you have covered your bases. And then that's going to reference back to your works cited page. Now, if you do not have an author's name for your source, if it's an article that just has a title, or if it's a YouTube video that doesn't have an author name but it just has a username, right? You will use the article title, or if it's social media, you will use the username. Okay. Now, after that, at the end of your paper, you will need a works cited page. Now, depending on if you're using MLA or APA or Chicago style, this may be called a works cited, it may be called a bibliography, it may be called a references list. The most important thing is that you do have that list of sources at the end. As the semester goes on, we'll talk more about the format and what they should look like. But here's the information I'm looking for. Most important thing, again, that author's name. If there is an author's name available, you must include that with your citation. All right. Next most important thing is the article title. With an author's name and an article title, I can Google those two things and almost always find the source you are using, especially at this stage in the semester where most of your sources will be online through Google. Later, when we get to the library sources, there's more information you must include, so I can check those through the library website. But at this stage, as long as you have those two things, I can track down most sources. You will also want to get in the habit of including the publisher and the date of publication, but at this stage, they are less important. Now, finally, if you're using an online source, I recommend you include the URL, especially at this stage. That URL is very helpful for me when I go in and check which sources you're using. I can just click it, go to the source, get a sense of what types of materials you're using. This is how I check your source types to make sure you're actually using a primary versus a secondary. So another key thing to bear in mind, you need 3 sources for this paper. I want you to have at least one primary source that you're focusing on to do that rhetorical analysis. Your other 2 sources, you have some options there. You can either use an additional primary source and talk about how the rhetoric from that source compares with your first one. You could also use just secondary sources to give us context, to tell us a bit more about what these primary sources are trying to do or why they are written a certain way. And then as a reminder, rhetorical analysis, it's likely a new kind of writing that you're not as accustomed to. So please do not worry if it seems strange or if you're uncertain about the directions. The most important thing for English 102 is that as long as you are getting the right number of sources, the right types of sources, and you're hitting that minimum word count, you're almost guaranteed a B on a paper. Simply because as long as you have all that information and you are using that information, you're going to be conveying a research paper. You're going to be producing a research paper. And that is what I'm looking for. The rhetorical analysis part, you will get better at that as the semester goes on. So with that, please let me know in case of any questions. Feel free to email or text anytime. If it's a quick question, I recommend text, especially for the project that's due tonight, or the paper. And additionally, if you need some extra time, just send me a quick email. As long as you send that email, normally Wednesdays, but for this week, Thursday is fine. You get an automatic 24-hour extension. You do not need to wait for my reply. The 24-hour extension is automatic. The minute you send that email, that 24 hours is approved. If you're going to need some extra time, say into Saturday or Sunday, just mention that in the email. I almost always approve those extension requests. It's just I really like to encourage communication so that get you ready for the job world where that kind of communication will be essential. So again, let me know of any questions. I hope you guys are having a good day, and I will see you next week.